So hello to everybody. Welcome to the webinar Resilience Go Business. My name is Lisa Zordel and I will give you a short explanation about how the webinar is running today. Every participant except Tanja will be muted, and if any one of you has something to say, you can just use the function raise your hand so that I can unmute you. And you have also the opportunity to use the chat function during the whole webinar. And after the presentation, Tanja will answer your questions. So if you have to answer, you ask some questions, please use the Q&A window below. And the webinar will be recorded and uploaded afterwards on our Women in Business YouTube channel. So now I would like to give the floor to you, Tanja.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and welcome everybody. And thank you also for giving me the opportunity and having me here. Resilience Goes Business. I will give you short but brief, intense view into resilience, and I will start though with myself. Just a second. Okay. Technical problems, I'm sorry. Okay. So let me start with introducing myself. I am an entrepreneur, business coach, trainer, and mentor, also public speaker, and I have a coaching and training business in the city of Karlsruhe. And I'm also a co-founder of She Potential, which is a platform for mothers who are planning a re-entry into their business life. So what is resilience? To start out, where the term comes from, it comes from the physics, and it describes the ability of a substance or an object to spring back into shape. Let's maybe think of a sponge that you squeeze in your hands, and you open up your hand, and you all know what happens. The sponge goes back into its shape. So that's where it actually comes from. But what we're talking about is something else. We are talking about the resistance, more or less, of the soul, which means it is the ability to deal with difficulties and setbacks well. And also, we're talking about the capacity to recover from those difficulties quickly. And it somehow means also to get some kind of tougher or achieve some kind of toughness in life. Before I start with the role models, let me get clear that resilient behavior at the workplace is also an important thing, because it helps the employees to cope better with the high demands today at the workplace. Don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean like that resilient employees can be expected to cope even more with demands. It means that you have a permanent state of emergency or something like that. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a comprehensive understanding of resilience, and that does not only refer to individual employees, it's also including the organization, and this is also something to have to consider. So it should give employees a sufficient scope for action and decision making. When we do talk about resilience, we also talk about role models, and you see some role models for resilience here. Maybe you know one or the other, Viktor Frankl or Michelle Obama, Nelson Mandela. I'm sure you know some of them, but it's not only role models that we talk about from the public. We can also talk about friends and family, and I'm sure you have resilient people all around, and you discover them most of the time with a special behavior, and especially when they're not having a good time. For example, when they have maybe a loss in business or a serious problem with their business, or how they recovered from illness, or when they overcome a divorce or death of a close person. So that's how you can find resilient people, how they deal maybe in a different way or unexpected positive way than you maybe thought of before. I don't know if you know Bethany Hamilton. She is a professional server from, I think, Australia or the States. She actually survived a shark attack. And the amazing thing was that she continued her career. And she's just a perfect example for a setback because she recovered, she lost her arm. And this is really like a miracle. And you can really see how a resilient person acts. Maybe you want to look that up. So you might ask yourself who is in particular a resilient person. And there's probably not only specific things, but there are a few things they have in common. And something I observed as well is that a lot of them are flexible and adaptable in new situations. And it's kind of interesting because if you look at the current situation with the coronavirus, I see a lot of people being in fear and fear-driven. And there's other people that are extremely creative, flexible, and adaptable in this new situation. So that's how you can spot resilient people. It is also that they have usually a keen interest in life. And they don't see life happen to them. They reflect on their life, and they, even maybe bad things happen to them or challenging things, they keep a positive mindset. They do help others, what I see, and not only, and this is also very important for you to understand, they're also willing to be helped. And that is important to know. It's not only about giving, it's also about taking in a positive way. And what I've noticed also that they have a sense of humor and laugh about themselves. So overall, even in bad situations, they have no victim behavior. They see a lot of challenges with an out of another view. They see chances rather than problems. And also in challenges, they focus on their strength and they accept what is and look for solutions. So now, of course, you ask yourself probably, how can I become resilient? Or maybe you wonder also if resilience can be learned. And looking at those pictures, maybe you see there's traits and states, and the traits are our roots on the left side, where we come from, our families, our environments, and the states on the right side, the water, that is when we are in the flow. Those are the things we can develop and also change. And also, we may not always have the best qualities in our traits because we have different or diverse circumstances, how we grow up. The states are always learnable, and with that, there's, as you can probably also imagine, we have a good message in there, because resilience is really something you can learn in your life, and you can develop it over your whole life. So, of course, I wanted to check out the current situation, and why do we need resilience today in business? And I came up with this VUCA model, as you probably all know, because the term VUCA is almost like a buzzword, but not only now in the current crisis. We're seeing what that term really means, I think. So if you look at the volatility in the situation, the COVID-19 situation, it changes literally hourly. And what was unthinkable a short time ago, for example, a lockdown of a whole country, is now reality. And what is so clear today that could be completely different tomorrow. I mean, we never thought of that could happen. So in resilience, that means we need to be a lot more flexible, and we need to adapt a lot more to the new situation. If you look at the uncertainty, I would say uncertainty fits somehow to insecurity. And looking at the crisis, nobody knows right now when the crisis will be over or how far it will go. And to be honest, nobody knows exactly what the right way is to deal with, because we just never had at this time an experience like that before. And of course, we're thinking about, is it the right way to stay home now, or should I do more, or can I even do more? And we need to find solutions, and this is also a factor of resilience, finding solutions for ourselves, because solutions usually give us security. So I'm just going to go one more, because the ambiguity, I think, is kind of interesting for also the resilience, because it means this situation is so tangible right now for us, because on the one hand, most of us recognize the seriousness of the situation, but there's also others that are actually reaping the benefit out of this crisis. And we need to ask ourselves, is this now a catastrophe or an episode that we will look back on calmly in a year's time? So as you see, this situation is a real trial, and gives us a great chance to grow our resilience, or to stay even more strong in our resilience. I do think that it is, especially for women, a trial, out of different reasons. There are some biological reasons for being a little bit more stress sensitive as a woman, but there's also other reasons, and I think it's the double exposure, or shall I call it double load, as a mother and businesswoman. And women in particular often put a lot of energy into their jobs and families, and due to that, they also suffer a lot from stress and feeling maybe a little bit overwhelmed with all the challenges they have in their life. And I am also the co-founder of She Potential, and I work with a lot of mothers. And because they have this double role, it also is clear to me that a lot of women have self-doubt, because they're in between those roles all the time. So resilience is really something where you can learn a lot of strategies also to become more self-secure. And of course, you can profit in your business from that. So there's different resilience factors. Let me give you for a clarification that also the names of these factors are not always identical in books or in literature. But here's a few that are mainly used in a common way, but please don't be surprised if you find then different kind of wordings if you read something about it. I will get into deeper with a few factors, but I want to start with the emotion regulation. And this is more or less really keeping your emotions in check. And again, this coronavirus gives us a great chance to practice resilience in keeping control over our emotions. And this actually describes some kind of an ability to remain calm under new situations or pressures. And just the difference is that that resilient people perceive their feelings actually more consciously than others. And they recognize that they can control them through also different behaviors and techniques. So they have like a kind of a toolbox how to react under pressure and how to react when they have different kind of emotions. So it doesn't mean to put your emotions away, but it means to be aware of your emotions. Impulse control is also a very, very important factor. And while emotional regulation is keeping your emotions in check, impulse control is actually keeping your behavior in check. And this is also very important for this time and also for business. Because people with a high impulse control have a clear strategy, especially when they want to achieve goals. And they plan in advance. And what is really the difference to a lot of other people, they do not immediately follow new impulses. So they somehow usually give up less often when something is not going well. And they're sometimes, or most of the times, more disciplined with a lot of things. Which, for example, at work, when they have a high impulse control, they can concentrate on a task over a long period of time much better. And which is very important also, they're less distracted. And this is something I'm always working on. They're not as distracted, for example, by incoming emails or by their mobile phone. Which means also that they bring things more likely to an end. And of course, it makes them happy and also their employer. Which one could what else could I pick? Yeah, maybe I'll pick also the self-efficiency is quite interesting as well. It is actually the belief in your ability to handle situations that come in your way. Also, for example, this situation. And it is a big time also about the conviction that we can change things through our own action. Very important also. I want to go a little bit into details. And realistic optimism is something that's also very important for your business. And I like asking that question in my trainings. It is like, who would you give your business to when you go on vacation? An optimist or a pessimist? And most of the people, of course, would want to give their business to an optimist. But to get this clear, we believe in a bright future, but within the bounds of reality. What it means, it describes also the conviction that things can and will turn for the better, but it also describes the ability to see and discover meaning and something even positive, like also in this situation, that even this situation will bring something good. So you probably know the metaphor of the glass is usually half full and not half empty. I don't know who you are, but you will find out if you're more optimistic or pessimistic, if the glass is more likely half full or half empty. So really resilient people, however, at the same time assess reality correctly. They don't look through the clouds, or don't know if the saying even exists in English, but in German we say you're not looking through rose-colored glasses. So you're not overly optimistic, because of course unrealistic optimism can lead to risky decisions and chances, and your success can be misjudged or leads you to wrong decisions. Now we're talking about realistic optimism, and here in the quote, I really like that, because the optimism is the faith that leads to achievement, which I find very true. Social network, support and empathy. I put a few factors actually together because I think it's all about humans and relationships and having reliable relationships, also communication. And as we see, this time is giving us a great chance for new communication, to really talk to each other. And I think network and social support has never been more important than right now. And it may some kind of surprising to you, for some maybe not, but helping and supporting others actually strengthens your own resilience a great deal. And it keeps you healthy much longer. And that also counts for your business and your network. And some or most of you probably know. And it's not only that you help people, it's also being helped that gives you resilience. And actually, this is a scientific proof for that psychic energy we give to others, we get back somehow. So it's a great time for networking right now, and it's a factor of resilience. So empathy is also another thing that I want to mention. You know, to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. You probably heard about that metaphor, and it describes actually the ability to put oneself in the psychological or maybe also emotional position of another person. And on that basis, you observe their behavior, which is kind of interesting. And empathetic people can feel more likely better what other people feel. And empathy somehow helps us, of course, to understand people better, or their counterpart. And for example, it's in business extremely helpful for people that are often, for example, in contact with customers. Therefore, it really helps you to communicate better. So the next one is future orientation, seeking out opportunities, and focus on the future more likely than on the past. What's interesting there, it means not only on the future, you also orient yourself towards your goal. And what I like about that, and this is also very good for the situation right now, is that future-oriented people, they seem to cope better with challenging situations because they are convicted that this situation is only temporary. So you understand by planning next steps, for example, it is extremely important that the tasks, that they become tangible somehow, that you feel them. And the implementation of a plan is really already facilitated and much more advanced when you plan your future. So also something that we can put a lot of energy in right now. So, of course, you might ask yourself, how can I strengthen my resilience? And I'm sure you already noticed that there's a lot of factors that you are already working on, conscious or subconscious, which is great, of course. But there's a few things maybe that you need to know. I'm just going to give you a little inspiration or a few tips for the upcoming weeks or days, how you can strengthen your resilience. So one thing is for sure, studies really show that health-oriented lifestyle, for example, good food, good nutrition, sufficient exercise, and a sensible approach to stress does not only strengthen your physical, but also your psychological resistance. So be aware of that. I see a lot of people jogging around this day and a lot of people taking care a lot better of their nutrition. So this is something very nice they're taking care of. But let me look or give you some ideas about inspiration, about your behavior and your thinking and your network. And let me start maybe with the thinking traps. I don't know if you know about thinking traps, but some of you probably do. It's more about a mental illusion we have in that moment. And of course, it's absolutely human, so don't worry. But for example, what you can do right now, if you do have thinking a tunnel vision, like for example, you're focusing only on negative aspects of the situation, you know that you will not get one step further. So maybe try to get a new perspective and to get somebody to talk to that maybe views the situation in a totally different way. Also, blaming yourself or others is not very helpful, as you probably know, because of course it will not bring you any further. So you might want to spend some time on really looking at the situation, what you have to do with it, what the situation has to do with it, and the others. Also, a thinking trap is reading the thoughts of other people, or even having the assumptions what they think. And yeah, could be mislead to a lot of reactions. And maybe just stop for a moment and get into the communication, or look at the situation again out of a different angle. It could help you to really get into a better communication again with the other. Also, to catastrophize is interesting because we do have the tendency to that, especially in crisis. And we totally overrate our own emotions, and sometimes we also overrate the situation. So for a moment, we can also sit down and really think about, oh gosh, is this really worth it, what I'm doing here, while I'm sitting happy and healthy in my living room? So this could also give you a chance really to overthink about the situation. Another aspect would be reevaluate, which gives you a different perspective as well, thinking out of the box, or just taking you out of a situation and actually getting a new perspective. And you can ask yourself a few questions. For example, how will you think about the situation a year from now? Yeah, it gives you a new perspective. Or what would your best friend advise you to do? Or how will you feel when you have mastered the situation? So you might want to write down the answers, and you might be surprised how you reevaluate the situation if you answer those questions. Another beautiful intervention could be that you get feedback from your network, and you just ask 5 people in your personal or in your business environment and ask them for feedback about yourself, where they experienced you, for example, really strong, as a really strong person, where you were fully in your power, and then ask them what exactly was it that made you so powerful in that moment, and how exactly did they experience you in this situation. That will give you a wonderful feedback, and you'll be surprised what kind of answers you get, and can enrich your life with the feedback of others, which gives you a great chance of a more resilient life and a view into yourself that you haven't even thought of. So I'm coming slowly to the end, and let me close with the words that resilience is, of course, not invulnerability. Okay, we all know that life gives us lections, and we can grow from those lections. Think, though, about those crises and in your life, like that they are strengthening you. We always have a choice and a different chance to view at things. Make sure that you try not always think about what is not possible, but especially about what is possible. We cannot run away from the problems, of course, but try to be open for the new. also the challenges. Get out of your comfort zones, and remember, resilience can be learned. So maybe you want to start today, and always look on the bright side of life. So I wish you to stay happy and healthy more than ever in your job, and of course, especially as a human being. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Tanja, for your presentation and for your advices. I think it was a very interesting topic, especially in this crisis we have at the moment. Let's have a look on the questions. I got some. One question was, it is hard to be optimist now when on the media is only news about the expected crisis, which will be worse than the one in 2008. Most of the small and micro companies stopped their activity at all. Could suggest several steps that could be successfully used by business women to become more resilient to the negative consequences caused by COVID-19, both emotionally and economic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I didn't. Sometimes it's well. Let me see. Okay, it is hard to be. I can see. Let me just overread it again. Yes. There's one thing, Maria, a very good question, and I really give you some advice. I would actually only watch the news once a day. And I would really pick the news that are really important to you to know. Because of course, I mean, we were talking about the mindset. And if we listen to the news the whole day, of course, we will more or less get into a pessimistic mindset. And it is very important, if you want to achieve goals, that you have a positive mindset. So it's important not to watch the news all the time. And you have to write down all the possibilities and steps that are for you now achievable. Okay, of course there's going to be negative consequences, and realistic optimism means not, oh, everything will be fine. No, we will have consequences out of that. And I think it is important that you do accept. Acceptance is also, by the way, a factor of resilience, that you do accept what is going on right now. But it doesn't mean that you cannot do anything in your personal world. So check out and talk to others. What can I do? Help others and ask for help in this situation. This is very important for business women. Last night I had a business call with innovative women, and it is amazing because there's so many ideas in the room that you haven't thought of. So make sure that you connect with other women that have maybe different ideas and also negative consequences, and share, because sharing helps you to deal also with emotional overwhelm, and find solutions together. That's something I would really recommend. Does this help, Maria?
I think she's
still there.
Yeah, now it's working. Okay. Yeah, she says, thank you very much for answering the question. And we have one more question. Is resilience only a personal trait, or can a team also be resilient?
Yeah. I did say something about that, actually. Also a very good question. Yes, it's a personal trait, it's true. And there are people that are a little bit more resilient out of their family history or biography or biologically. It's true. But as I said, it is also a state resilience, and that is something you can learn. So the more you get involved with the factors of resilience and understand and practice and try, the more resilience you become. So resilience is something you can learn, actually. It's good news. And maybe you want to re-listen to the presentation and write some things down for yourself that might help you. But there's also some good books. I wrote one book down here, which I can recommend. But there's more books on resilience that are very helpful.
Thank you very much.
And the second question was, can a team be resilient? Yes. And that actually starts, Irina, with oneself, which means each of the team members should check their resilience program. How resilient am I? And should work on their strength and should work on their weakness. But there is something like organizational resilience. And that means, for example, that they can have, that they have like a sufficient scope, you know, where they can have an action part and also part of decision making. If you cannot have that in a company, it becomes a little bit of difficult to be a resilient team, but it can be also learned, and it needs communication.
Thank you very much, Tanja.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I think these were all questions we got, but I think you gave our young women entrepreneurs a lot of good advices, and I think we have to use this time in a crisis maybe to get more resilient.
Yes, that's true. Great chance. It's a trial.
So thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks to all participants for listening, and I wish you all to stay healthy.
Yes, same to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.